Saturday, Saturday, Saturday morning, Saturday, 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 Saturday morning, Saturday, Saturday. Booyah! Welcome. It's Saturday morning. We're doing Art of Rock from all over the country and one day all over the world. This is brought to you by Angelspit's Patreon. Oh, sorry. Join us every Saturday here on Angelspit's Twitch or Facebook or wherever you're watching. Because there's going to be a lot more content going on Angelspit's Twitch. So go like that. This is brought to you by Angelspit's Patreon. Many of the amazing people in Angelspit's Patreon are here. Thank you so much, sincerely. We keep each other going. If you got a couple of bucks a month you want to spend me to keep the rock going, throw it there. Angelspit's Patreon. Oh yeah. New single from Angelspit versus Queen of the Static Opera. The band is called Venus of Gorgon, and the track is called Breathing But Not Alive. It's on Bandcamp. Go get it. Ice Planet 9000 have got a new single on Spotify. It's there, and there's going to be a bunch of these. Lily, welcome. There's going to be a whole bunch of new Ice Planet 9000 stuff, and we're going to start dropping new Angelspit stuff too. Bum, bum, bum. And new Miss Ballistic as well. Man, it's happening. It's there. Plus, another dude we're dropping is Benoit. Benoit is from the Insanity of Hell. That is Grim Life of Hack and Slash. That's Grim Reaper for Hire. Benoit does short horror spoken word. And Angelspit did the music, and Benoit did the vocals, and it's all about hell. As the Grecian and Roman, I think mainly Grecian, concept of hell. And it's really spooky. And there's I think there's about 8 of these coming. Keep an eye on this. I want you to go like Benoit. It's bloody awesome. On the subject of Spotify, go like that playlist. There's a whole bunch of killer tracks you need to know about. Many of those tracks are from bands here. Go support them. Chris likes retro. Always good to see you in the chat. Go support them. Thank you so much. And go like them. On the subject of music, oh yeah, if you like it non-stop, you have to watch MTV TV. There's their Twitch. And once we're done here, we're going to zoom right on over to MTV's Twitch. If you have a video, send it to them and they will play it. They've also started a Patreon. Go support them, because we got to keep MTV TV going. Aussie Rob, great to see you, my friend. Welcome to Art of Rock. It is Saturday morning. I've got a question. And my question is, your mics are live. I want to start doing a podcast, a video thing, similar to this. Kind of like a chit-chat with an artist who uses hardware synthesizers live, and also uses them in the studio. So they're hardware-based. And I'm going to ask them questions. I want to create something that's going to get you inspired to use your synthesizers. You don't go out and buy new gear. That's not what this is about. This is about getting inspired to use what you have, make your music happen. All right, I got people. My question is, what do you want to see in that podcast? What do you want to see? Rezi, I see your hand. Hold on. Ivan, welcome. And Paula, welcome. Everybody just keep your mic muted unless you're talking. And if you want to throw in, put your hand up. And the question is, what do you want to see in the Synth Nerd podcast? And Rezi, go.
I think that my favorite version of this would be a lot of time spent on creating patches and exploring what something they like about a particular synth is. Like maybe dedicated to one device seems to be the idea, or at least one person's favorite device is something categorically, but some amount of time where the synths are hooked up properly so you get the good audio, and there's some back and forth about building the patches or editing or some particular sound the thing makes with the actual examples in real time and live noises.
Hands-on doing it as opposed to two people talking about it.
I like the two people talking because, that's what we're sort of here for, but I think that would be a super... that would really expand the possibilities, and maybe just be really cool to listen to, because if there's some cool playing going on, it doesn't have to be like a jam session replacing the talking about it, but you could go pretty far with that.
I love it. That's awesome. Libby, welcome. How do they document the studio synth setup for different projects? That's a good one as well. Thank you, Aussie Rob. Yeah, I'm also looking, Lily, at your comments. If anybody else has something they want to throw in, Lily says, I think that would be a good idea. Talk about the features of different synths or showcasing new ones. Because I do want to have, this is me using synthesizers right now. Do you hear it? And it's going to be a Zoom thing. So there's going to be a bit of kerfufflery going on to make sure all the audio and everything else works. Because that sucks. Paula, turn on your camera. Paula actually emailed me about this, so take note, Paula. Yeah, I want to know about other thoughts on Rez. I see your hand again.
I was just reminded of 20,000 Hertz podcast did a piece on Buchla versus Moog last week's episode, and it's kind of a corny layman person targeted podcast. It's not for people who actually already know this stuff. And it's overly produced because they're a effects production house. So they spend a lot of time doing special effects and like noises and stingers and zips and stuff. And it's kind of distracting from the actual content. But the history of the synth creators as related to the synth that you're using, there's always a ton of stuff, whether it's Roland or Moog or Buchla or Harp. You know, there's always something to go into.
That's really interesting. Like, I was talking to someone, actually Phil Securo, who does the CMS ARP 2500 absolute copies because they're not clones. And he was talking about, I never thought about this, to use, if you want to blow bass, like kaboom, use a high-pass filter. I never thought about that. And you put the resonance, you turn up the resonance, because a low pass adds the resonance at the top, where you're turning the frequency up and down. A high pass puts it at the bottom, where you're sucking the sound out of it. And if you track that, loving these questions, Rob. If you track that by volts per octave, so it's actually playing that boom, you will result in something that is like epically pop. And I've never thought of that before. I've never had that idea. And the great thing about a high pass is that you got all the high frequencies, and then you've got this massive thump, and then you're getting rid of everything below, where you don't want to be, which I thought was a great idea. Never thought about that. So, it's even stuff like that, because I call myself pretty good, okay, at a modular synth, but I'll be talking to someone that's like, man, I've never thought about doing that. Or somebody talks to me about, something really simple, and it's like, I never think about it. Give me ideas. Anyone? Or filing that, because this is a fizzer. Give me another question. Let's go. Give me a question. Go.
All right. This is Paula here. I'm just going to be stepping in.
Hey.
Yeah. Hi. Good to be in. As you can see, I closed and am owner of this condo and near the end of July, where I am in New Mexico. And as you can see, this is where I keep my Yamaha Motif XS6 over here.
Great.
I have my Saki ESQ1. When I actually have that real downtime is when I'm setting everything up. The Korg TR has always been something I've kept when I was 17. I've had a time where I had a manual on me, and then I lost it, but then I printed it up. But I always like to make certain to keep a personal hard copy, so I don't have to boot things up to look at the particular factors of its own unique sequencer traits that it has. Because what I would do sometimes is use the voice patches that would be in its digital banks that it would be, and I would basically use this RPPR feature that it had, and where you could have the keys play like how a sampler would, where you could have a full like music bar or whatever, that'd be in 4/4/8, whatever you would want, and then you could put in, of course, the notes or whatever. But you could make it to where you would make a certain instrument patch or sound or whatever not sound like the instrument to which it was based upon. That was something that I would do to compensate for the fact of not using the modulations to it excessively, was one of the tricks that I did before. Some of you may still use these things. I just wanted to ask: for some of you that are here, I do know that I have altered some of the voice data banks a bit, where I've changed a few different things of either octaves or certain frequencies to get certain ideal sounds if I want to get to those voice programs. But I just wanted to see with other people if they did something very similar with other keyboard workstation synths. That's going to be the question that I'm going to be throwing out there, Carl.
Okay. Rezi, I see your hand go.
If I understand the question, then, which I might not, and I apologize if I missed the details. If from my experience, if the synth has front panel controls, I will rely on the memory and stuff and have all custom patches and just, step through them, because I know I can get it back to what I wanted, or something close enough for that song. But I stopped relying on really crucial stuff to be recalled on any given synth. That's on backing tapes. I never even used sequencers live synced to the backing stuff. It was strictly auxiliary stuff goes on the tracks. So it made it very easy to, if the synth that I'm standing behind dumped all its programs, or it's something that I've modified and it doesn't come back the right way, that's fine. There's front panel stuff. I can get something pretty quickly. And stuff that's like really crucial cues, sometimes, things don't come back exactly the way you wanted them, but hopefully you'll know your device well enough that you've seen it maybe in its default state, and you know what its demo patch sounds like in its default state, so you'll know how to get from that to what you need fairly rapidly. But really, in a choreographed live performance where there's backing tracks doing the lighting and your busy sequenced stuff, and hopefully not vocals or guitar or anything, but that stuff, it doesn't matter nearly as much as it might, like if you're recording or composing. Those things are crucial. You want it to be exactly the way it is. So, and give me more details if I sidestepped the question and came up with my own thing, because I'm really curious as to if I hit what you were saying.
I think you very much hit it on the spot, because of course there's certain cases where of course the things may be returned back to factory settings. Those circumstances can always come about for whatever particular reason. But yeah, that's I honestly have only had like one live thing that I did in my late teen years, but then it was just my Korg, and then I had used a Roland SP404 thing that I would just put some little samples into like really quickly, and went that route, and then froze a lot of it and repurposed the things for other matters that I would explore with other people and their music that I would be working on, and then decided to freeze that over, and then mainly just to keep a certain atmosphere going. I was talking about with Carl, or like in my email, about the concept of using your environment of where you are situationally to synthesize the solution. That would be the ideal effect. And
I've seen people do it so well, like just on the fly, coming up with a moment inspiration, including not just the performance of melody and rhythm, but the patch, just turning the knobs, getting the sound, and boom, they're in there. So it's a practice that as much as the music.
Kerry,
and
oh, sorry. Paula,
just another thing is,
Go ahead, Paula. Sorry.
yeah, the more music that I've found myself listening to in life has made me not as concentrated necessarily as patches, because you find yourself in a different social climate that has always emerged as well. That's what I think has been something that has come about, and I think it's where some may have to, in order to maintain relevance, especially within a certain climate of the people within, like, well, it almost seems it's a lot like age range, social demands, and the accelerated evolution of different social pressures that always come about. I almost think that also comes to a role of how that comes all integral to the music making process that we utilize in that art form, whether it has a more something that I would say would have a more organic foundation to the higher tiers up that would be the more electronic endeavors would be what I would be saying. But that's the thing, is like you have only one machine that you're always constantly working with, and the battery pack and energy supply that there is. And I think that there's always going to be that that's always going to have to be tended to as whatever you weigh into it as the square one for the creativity that goes out. So that's what I wanted to say.
very interesting. Hold on, just before I throw to you, Razzie, Kerry, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I might be irrelevant to the conversation now, but I keep a mini fuse connected to my Ableton software, and then that way I can plug in a hardware, a semi-analog synthesizer to it, and then when I find that right sound and I don't want to lose it, I send it to the Ableton and save it onto an external hard drive. And that was towards the earlier part of the conversation, if that makes any sense. And then later on, I can even go in and tweak it out and add some more filters and grooves and such to it and make it even cooler. But I'm just a sound hoarder that when I find something that sounds really good, I just get it over there and save it, because I don't want to lose it for fear of not finding it again.
That's epic. Resi, I'm going to go in after you. Go, Dr. Wessel.
It's interesting you mentioned the social motivations and interactions about synthesizers, because the nature of performing music is either artistically, personally motivated, or publicly as an audience motivated. And if you're more beholden to an audience that has expectations, then ties into what Kerry was just alluding back to, is your responsibility to make backups and have other ways of pulling in what you need, and the show must go on, and never having to call in and say, well, my laptops were stolen, so we can't do the show. Have a way to do it with backline. Within reason. Obviously, there's the contract only goes so far, and there are things that will make it impossible to do what you meant to do for your audience. But then on the other hand, with the artistic vision being your pure motivation, some of that doesn't matter, and it may be just exciting to be thrown into the deep end and have starting from a scratch point every time and doing a fully improvisational, self-indulgent thing. And I don't know if I want to pitch a topic quite yet, but coincidentally I wrote down the difference between motivation when you have ideas for your own stuff and motivation when you know that there's an audience that already wants it. But Aussie Rob has posed about 400 questions that I would also love to, maybe Carl's going to jump into. But before we broach the other thing, let's, Carl, you please jump back in.
when I'm doing Ice Planet 9000 stuff, I'll have an idea and I try to. All sounds get built from scratch, like everything, samples the whole lot. And I will go into it and I'll do a jam session. In the jam session, sometimes I stream them, sometimes I don't. I always record them. The jam sessions go for an hour at least. And it's actually really interesting when you're building sounds and you're jamming it out, that sound doesn't work. So you tweak it during the jam. Clock's running and you're tweaking that sound till you get the right pad sound or the right stab or whatever. It's difficult when it's a sampler or something because reasons. Knobs, man. There's not enough knobs. And that's a really interesting organic way of actually building sounds and letting them evolve while the clock is running in a jam session. It's really interesting. Or, if you're not doing that, then you put it on a gigantic loop and you sit there for hours, which is something I'm allowing myself to do now, is have fun making music. Running it through distortion or not, and just endlessly fucking with shit. I try to use sounds only once in one song. Every sound is built from the ground up. Everything, kick drums, the whole lot. And I've got modular fucking kicks and 808s and claps and hats and shit, so I can go through and but it's really interesting. I still need to. I work really hard to try and get away from the bass sounding like Moog bass, which is hard because like Moog bass is such a fucking good bass. And it's funny. I go through the Voyager. Obviously I'll save the preset, but I don't use the same preset twice. I'll go through it listening to them, going, man, these are all pretty damn similar, and I know they work, but I just want to. Me personally, I'm trying to get away from that. I just went on a rant. Alex!
I just wanted to quickly give some, some praises to modern samplers, because I think it has gotten a lot better. For example, in the Octa track, I can just tweak stuff and I can get a different sounding kick in in 30 seconds just by EQing stuff. And I think also stuff like the Iridium or other samplers have much more direct control that you can apply on the fly, so you don't have to go through editors and so on. So I think this has gotten better with samplers.
I totally agree. And just FYI, if anybody else has an Emax, boom! That's an Emax sound editor, where it will sysx send information to the Emax. Information, it's text pad size stuff, so it's not going to jigger stuff up. And you can tweak it as you go. And it's a VST apparently. And it's free, because the Emax is the greatest sampler in the world. There you go, boom. Raz, I see your hand again. I was looking at Aussie Rob's bloody things. No, I've never been in a Turkish prison camp. Go. Raz?
You know what? I just got distracted by Aussie Rob's list of questions too. I was going to say something about the difference between when your sampler went down and you had to reload from floppies. It was the only way, versus when you had to reload over MIDI SDS, versus when you actually had them on a hard drive, versus what I think most people have is some sort of flash-based or permanent, semi-permanent RAM-ROM synergy that's inside a trigger pad, or maybe even some of the multi-pad controllers. And that can be a little bit dangerous in that you think it's going to come up every time, just because when you power it on, all your sounds are always there. But that's an even better reason to have practiced having it dump and reload them from whatever the media is. Because there's no way, once you get used to all those things coming back just from on power on, when it disappears that time is a surprise for the first time, and you're in the middle of a gig and it's like you have no way of recovering them because you collected them from AM radio in 1992.
Yeah. Good fun. Good
old
fun.
people stuff too.
Old people stuff too. And we could talk about SyQuest drives and why they never worked, and why zip drives, man, I'm telling you. You just still drop those fuckers and they die. It's like pain in the ass. Anyway, I digress. Does anybody else want to throw in a definite question or a short, punchy response? Or do we want to move to another question? Alex, I can tell you want to... All right, let's move to another question. Give me a question. Short and zappy. Let's go. I could do one of Rob's. Which elements of your sound do you preserve as your artistic style or identity? There you go. What is your culture of creating sound? Okay, Paula, do you want to answer that question, or do you want to go down another wormhole?
I think why not? With what is a matter of culture of sound? It's well, that's the thing, is that I guess that depends on how you as the artist are have, I guess, whatever attributes to your willpower and what there is in culture, because you and for me, culture can either be in groups of people, or you understand like how things participate in a petri dish, like that, like of microbials in it, is like another way that you can see it as. And in some cases you may go from one place to another when it comes to culture. Sometimes you may find yourself engaged more in workplace culture, as an example. That's what I've kind of been doing for me with my kind of pursuit, was mainly to make certain that I could have some kind of like anything that had intrinsic value that I could always maintain wherever I was going with how I've utilized my synths or whichever. And trying to maintain that, so that way I always had some kind of like the matter of being the participant in hardware basis. Then I mean, there's always going to be some matter of software, but it's only when there would be some downtime, because I would be working at certain call centers or whatever, and then when you have certain times where you always have to work with a Windows operating system or whichever, you kind of, I think that sometimes you that's where it's like, where sometimes if you're that person, you may want to have a break from having that as the foundation to what you are utilizing for the creative process. For example, I realized this when I had a place I always returned to. I wanted to be able to figure out the use of tones and other matters, and if I wanted to do something vocal, that I had the right instrument into place. I used to play like a bass guitar when I was like starting at age 13 to 16, before I got my first synthesizer for a local group that were there, and then I decided to go all forward, mainly because the other members were all playing their own ways. They decided that they didn't want me in there, but I was like, I'm still going to do something, but I'm going to do it as a solo project where I know stuff and I move forward with things, in contrast to where they were. And I just wanted to just do that for myself, and what I knew what I could do in my own capacity, and what I knew what I had to as being resourceful at the time. And then a few years down the road, I was gifted from my mom and dad a flamenco guitar, mainly because I live in the southwestern United States, and I'm always interested in the cultural history, and using that more to my advantage of mainly being someone to say that I'm very capable of being someone who's here to stay, not perturbed by whatever activity that's going on in this place or that place, and kind of using that, or how depictions are used in film and other things about that's like maybe it's 100. We may have synthesizers during this time frame, but culture sometimes there are some things that don't really change over 100 years or more sometimes. So I'm happy to go back to using something as a staple like that so that I can still be able to think about working with sounds and other things. Like now that I have some time up, when I'm finding myself returning back home in the evening, when it comes to like the creation process, it's what I like to save is just right before I'm resting for the next day, to allow me to utilize instruments and what I write down to journalize things on the sonic soundscape too, and what's in the whole process. So what I think is interesting is like when you have a guitar, how many different you have in contrast to a 61 key keyboard, you have a wider range to work with when you have 6 strings and all the octaves that go through in that place. And when you have like not only like the metal strings that you have, but you also have a series of plastic strings, the kinds of sounds that you could create that have been inspired from works that have had an electronic foundation to them, but changing it to the narrative and using an acoustic instrument. And that's been something that I have been concentrating on, so that way I still have something to continue with a persistence on, and still being able to create a budget, and even working potentially with a project where that may at least have something to go on wherever I'm going. If there are going to be some events where they want to have somebody do a guitar, that's something that I was thinking of having, is at least the guitar part until I build things up higher to electronics with whatever.
That's really interesting about guitars. I'm going to throw it to you, Rezi.
Preserve, I think, is one of the interesting. If we're on the which elements do you preserve question, is that correct? Has my mind been blown?
Baby, I want you to go to Planet Rezi now and take us with you.
Population 1. Doors are
Let's
open.
make it Population 2.
That's beautiful, man.
It's gonna be me and you.
Shit
flows, man.
Yeah. So back, that's not the energy I was gonna bring to this question. I appreciate being thrown off on my.
That's what I do. Keep going, baby.
There's a couple of things that I preserve in the morass of making stuff and noticing that this is something I want to keep. That was technically dazzling. I like it. Let's put that in the keep bin. Or I've reached an emotional place where this is just awful and I can't bear it, so I need to preserve it. And someplace between those two things hopefully ends up relatable and entertaining. And those are like sort of honest aspects of my musical identity, having, the two biggest influences being progressive and goth kind of stuff. So I don't know. It's a weird way to talk about it, preserving. But I like that because it's about recognizing some simple stuff about what one hopes is a vast and complex body of work over the lifetime. But it does come down to that.
Cool. Thanks, man. I'm going to go after you, Alex.
I think it's something you shouldn't worry too much about, because I think just by your taste you will have like a certain consistency in your material. For example, like in the way you compose, but also like in the kinds of sounds you like. For example, I like certain guitar sounds that are very mid-focused and that are like early punk. And I also like synthesizer sounds with lots of high ends that are really cutting. And there are other synthesizer sounds I would probably use less. And just by that, I mean, I program most of my sounds myself, but even if I wouldn't, just by selecting the ones I like and the ones I didn't like, I will have like a certain consistency. Also, I think what can give you consistency is just to have the same instruments, or like even like the same structure. Have like a bass, a lead synth, a key synth, and certain aesthetics in your drum machine, or like drum samples, or your drummer has a certain set. I think that can keep things very consistent. But again, I think it's something you shouldn't worry about too much.
Fantastic. I personally don't want consistency. I'm trying so hard to get out of consistency because, oh my God, one always finds oneself gravitating your head up your anus. I don't mean the planet either, because you just fall into this fucking rut. I have 2 kick drums, and because they're the best fucking kick drums in the world. One is I stole from someone, and the other one I stole from someone who stole it from someone, and because they're really good kick drums. And I have this thing of, when you get to meet someone, you say, when you get intimate, it's like, do you want to share kick drums? That's a big step. Would you like to share? And it goes beyond, okay, well, we've gone shopping together. We've gone roller skating. We went down by the river and we held hands. You may have even stuck your tongue in. But now it's time to share kick drums. And we do it. And I always listen, and it's a letdown. Because I listen to their kick drum and I go, I fucking hate your kick drum. We're done. Back to the friend zone. Back to the hi-hat zone for you, buddy. Because, and then they listen to my kick drum and they go, what is this? It's the greatest kick drum in the world. The Angelspit kick drum, I give it to no one. One person has it, and that's Lux Voltaire, because I stole it off him. But it's the greatest kick drum in the world. And everybody else who listens to it go, I hate this. It just takes up every frequency, and it's this great big thing, and I use it on so many tracks, and it's instant Angelspit. But, that's why I spent money I didn't have several years ago getting that fucking BD9 from Hex Inverter. Bloody good kick module, let me tell you. To try and do something different. And because, it's great to be able to tune it. Don't tune your kick drum is my advice, because tune kick drum is like Nicey McNice. I don't want Nicey McNice. I don't even know who Nicey McNice is, but I don't like him/them. You want brutality, and you want to, and it's got to be brutal before compression and before distortion. The melody has got to be beautiful before you add heaps of reverb on it. The song's got to be interesting when you play it on a piano or some crappy fucking instrument. It's got to be, and I guess that's my thing is that, I've been having a conversation with somebody recently. Stop me because I'm boring. Fuck off. I've been trying to write ambient music, drone music. And I was bitching about this last week, I think, and I just can't do it. I was trying this week, I just can't do it. Because it's boring. It's great to listen to. I love listening to that shit. The Steve Roach going off. It's great. But I can't write that stuff. I just can't do it because it doesn't engage my brain to go, yeah, let's keep going. I can't do it. So, I need shit that's keeping my fucking buzzard head entertained, during the writing process. And I think that's why my music's so aggressive. It's because I'm bored, and I know that I gravitate towards a certain hue of sounds. Who is Hugh anyway? And why has he been hijacked on color and sound? Hugh wanted to be a novelist. Think about Hugh. Bastards. I know, fuck Hugh. But yeah, it's, yes, thank you, Rob, Kittenhole forever. Yeah, but I don't know. It's just the weird thing about, sound design is that, once you've gone, with the music and the melodies and the drums and everything, then you go, with the sounds. Or you go, nice sounds. Whatever you're into, I don't know. Alex, entertain me.
I would continue with kick drums, so maybe if Raziel has something else to continue, he might want to go first.
I was gonna jump off just slightly. For me, it was snare drums, and that intimacy, rite of passage, leveling up, it's a thing you can pass on to somebody. It's a thing that if they don't have their own cherished collection of perfect drums yet, and you have one that is right up their alley. I was recording with the first time I was in a studio, and it was a good engineer, producer who'd done some stuff I knew, and my snare drum was weak. My snare drum was mediocre. My snare drum was not making the song.
It wasn't Owner of a Lonely Heart.
It was definitely not. It was, I don't know.
Yeah.
So something closer to an 808. But he loaded into a one-shot sample trigger playback thing to trigger off of my snare drum this gorgeous, explosive cannon shot of a classical snare drum hit in Jordan Hall at the famous acoustic space here in Boston. And it was a natural snare drum and natural reverb hit by a stick in a room, close enough mic'd so that it was punchy, but the balance of that space, it was like 7 seconds of reverb tail on this thing. You'd see the timer playing every time the snare drum would trigger, and it would play up until the next drum hit. And just this, I use it on a ton of stuff, and I definitely passed it on. And I don't know if anybody else got the same bang out of having that, but there's an intimacy and a community thing there, passing those sounds on.
Just really quickly, so I really want to get a fucking clean sample of the Fairlight Series 3 snare that is the big 80s snare drum. Also, I did record I'm sorry, Alex, I suck. I did record a punk rock drummer, microphone over the top of the snare. Add a bit of gate and you're fine. And I got him doing like seven different strikes. And I use that all the time because each strike is different. So it's this organic thing. And a great thing about, because I've got the clap and the I've got the clap.
Got the clap.
And also the snare, the 808 snare from Hex Inverter. And you can alter the pitch. So you're sending the minor, tiny little pitch information. Yeah. And man, it makes such, and you can do that on the Emax as well. Like you set velocity to be the pitch, just this much. Because the harder you hit a snare or something, it does change the pitch. I'm sorry, Alex, that was your time. Go.
No problem. I think kick drums are really interesting because they are so important in modern music. And there's such a variety in taste. Like, I think the two main differences are some people have like really high impulsive kick drums, and some people have like low moving kick drums. I don't know how to call it. And I think it's almost a religion which one you prefer.
Kind of like the Glockenspiel.
I wanted Alex to say it.
Glockenspiel.
Thank you.
Anyway.
Rob's being Rob in the comments, so go on, Alex. We're listening to you.
Yeah, of course, this has consequences in how you perform your bass, how you put your bass into your music, because ideally the kick drum and the bass wouldn't collide in the frequencies. So I feel like people, I don't know, I'm getting this look. Anyway, I think people who have like high kick drums have lower bass, and people who have lower bass have higher kick drums.
I don't give a flying fuck about that.
Okay.
The argument. No, it's important, and I'm not going to diss what you're saying at all, because it's actually really important that the kick and the bass coexist together. Mine do not, and they never have. And I am aware of this. Like, I've had people say that the bass frequencies are supposed to be lower than the kick, or some bullshit. Look, everyone's got their
Depends.
thing. It depends, exactly. And that's what's really wonderful as well, is that, sorry, man, I just totally interrupted you. Your hand is still up. The floor is still yours.
No problem. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's something where it's probably better to think less. I personally prefer like 909-ish kick drums, but again, that's totally subjective. And yeah, I think in case of tuning, I think you should tune them not to a frequency, but by ear what feels right. I think that's a good approach.
Yeah. You're the best. Also, it sounds like I'm selling gear. I'm not. You can't get them anymore anyway. The BD9 from Hex Inverter, the Mutant Kick, which is based on the 909, which is a sine wave. The BD, the Hex Inverter kick also does, it will also do square wave. And the square wave is oh man, it's nasty. I wish it had a sawtooth ramp, because that would be fucking tits. But yeah, it's really interesting that the war between bass and kick. I always have two bass lines playing the same thing. One is a sub bass, the other is a bass, and the bass is an octave usually above it. Might have, sub elements, but I sort of gently EQ that out. With the sub, I will sidechain that or do a high pass filter pushback of the sub to the kick. So every time the kick slams in, the subs are sucked out of that sub bass. And I also have I will often have a top end kick drum as well, like a kick drum that is just the pulver on the bass, and then the other one sits up there, and I'll always mix the sub bass and the sub kick together. But man, it's really and also if you're going to have that secondary kick up an octave or so, that everything above 100 cycles, make it a big stereo thing. Keep the sub absolutely dead mono, like mono sample, mono, mono treatment, the whole lot. Even mono bus with your mono low pass fucking sub bass. Yeah, it's really interesting that I don't. I find that to make music aggressive, you don't. It's important that there is aggression in the music. I think that you like I've got a song on at the moment. I'm not happy with it because it's too nice, and it's too all the frequencies are being nice to each other. I don't want that. Ice Planet 9000, sure, be nice. Kind of. Not really. But, yeah, I don't know. But nevertheless, I think it's a very important skill to have where everything is behaving, because there will come a time where you need shit to behave. Alex, if your hand is still up, I'm going to throw it to you. Otherwise, I'm going to throw it to the Raz.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a missing market, or like a not very evolved market with drum synthesizers. Like even in software, there are just a few where you can really go into it. Most drum machines in software and in hardware are just sample based. I think one that's really good is the M-Bass 11 from Jomox, and also the Nord.
Oh yeah.
And in software there is one by Native Instruments I like. It's called something like Track 1. It's like a mix of bass synthesizer and kick drum, but just the kick part is like really good. And yeah, I had something else to say, but I don't know.
Sorry. Raz.
We talked about the bass line below the kick below the bass. But then there's also that camp where you duck every bass with every kick. And I don't know if anybody performs that. I generally don't. I'll take a good, song-by-song assessment of where the frequencies have to be, and don't get too crazy and lose track of what's chained to what. But for anybody who has sidechained the bass and pads that have bass content off of the kick hits, it's another effective way of making space every quarter note for your kick drum to do all the work it needs to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I could just say thank you, Fleetwood Mac Rumors. I know it didn't need to get said. We were all thinking that. Greatest relationship between kick and bass ever. Yeah, I'm going off. This is a personal thing. I'm trying to move away from sidechaining, and what I'm doing is more frequency orientated, like sucking high end stuff out, because you don't hear it. Because when everything else is in there, you don't hear the volume drop, and you don't sound like Deadmau5. Don't get me wrong. I fucking love Deadmau5. Guilty pleasure. The guy is brilliant. Give him a break. Fucking brilliant. But I just want to move away from that. Yeah. Anyway.
Hopefully your mastering chain and your 2 mix is going to do a little bit of that work also anyway in the end. So
yeah, but
harkening back to tape saturation on Fleetwood Mac. Yeah,
well, and my thing is that I'm trying to really minimize all mastering, because I will put isotope on every single bus, and then I will take most of that shit out there, so it's ever so slight multiband compression, ever so slight. In fact, that's usually, and a bit of EQ. Get rid of the limiting, get rid of all of that shit. The job is just to slightly glue everything together. That's it. Because I used to go too intense and blah blah blah. But I don't know, I talk to you guys and I go, fuck, I still have so much to learn. It's not really well, it is so much to learn, but it's also, I need to adapt more opinions. Like, I have to, if Razzie was fucking mixing this track, how would he do it? If Alex was doing this, how would he do it? Like, that's really powerful. That's powerful about these meetings. Talking about powerful, Ivan the Fantastic. Blow my mind, baby.
I am lazy, so for me it's a little bit of EQ on the bus for the bass and the drum, and then the sidechain compression, just to get one out of the way of the other, depending on which direction feeling that song needs to go. And occasionally I'll mess with ducking, although I don't really, I don't know if I like what it does most of the time, so generally speaking, I'm just using sidechaining. Because, again, I'm lazy.
And we love you for being lazy. This is good. I love it. Does anybody else want to throw in about... Razzie, do you want to talk a little bit about Fleetwood fucking Mac?
I don't know if I have anything new to bring to the table this week about
Fleetwood Mac. As long as
Mac.
it's not lies, sweet little lies.
No, I mean... I left my headscarf in the other room, but...
I keep mine with me all the time, and my tambourine. And my long flowy dress.
Tamborine's nearby.
Hey, you and me should go as either Nick or Kate Bush for Halloween. Because if you were Stevie Nicks, you'd be black, and if I was Kate Bush, I'd be in red.
Would people get that? I don't know.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. But we could dance around them with your tambourine, and I could be doing Heathcliff. It's me. It's Kathy. I've come home.
Yes.
That would be awesome.
As long as you're doing the interpretive dances.
It's all about interpretive dances. How can you say that? Anyway, kicking, go on a rant.
I think that's kind of been exhausted. I'd be repeating stuff that Alex, Ivan, and you already covered well. There's a great space for performing the parts. If you happen to have a drummer in the room and you happen to have a bass guitar in your hands, or maybe you are doing both, there is another level to controlling your accents and volumes and the length of your bass duration notes, playing off of what the drummer is doing. And this is a level that doesn't really... It's kind of the same thing that we're trying to introduce in the discussion of electronic music, where it's a synth bass and a synth kick drum fighting it out for priority, where James Jamerson and John Taylor and well, okay, two bassists that I happen to love really know how to play on the upbeats, the off eights, take some accents and grace notes, and then like really land where the kick is. And there's, that's kind of magical. I think that's also pretty well trodden territory, and nobody's going to necessarily argue that, but it's just, it's another layer of influence that you can bring into your programming to do some of that accents and timing stuff along and around the kick drum with the bass notes.
And Bootsy Collins.
I'm not as much of a fan. I mean, I love what he does, but it's not like there's something in the groove and articulation of a lot of other bassists that he's like on the one and like really brash, and obviously his personality is outsized and he brings so much to the music just through that. But I never like caught on to him as like one of my favorite bassists in the same way. But,
we need to have Bootsy Con.
Yeah.
That would be
I should know more about his stuff.
Ah, dude, do a deep dive. Him and Bernie Warwell, the keyboard player.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Rest his soul. What they did, man. Holy crap. What they did. They have Dude Fest, Dude Con in LA, where everybody dresses up like the dude from Big Lebowski.
Right.
And walks around drinking White Russians, and I am so going one year. I swear to God. Alex,
the bassist that comes to mind that's a little maybe closer to our genre is Doug Wimbish. Some of the stuff that he's done.
What band's Doug in?
Tackhead Sound System was the first thing, and then he played on I think Seal, and I don't have it right at hand, but he's a little more in genre with electronic stuff. So.
It is interesting. Alex.
So I would have a new topic, if that's all right.
Shoot, baby.
I sometimes have the problem if I try to make aggressive music that it gets too muddy. The remedy I've come to for myself is that I just try to use less instruments but more efficient, or like more impactful, and like not having too many layers, but the one aggressive synth going full force. And the other thing is I try to create an sensation of impact with reverbs and such, and maybe with changing up the decay of certain sounds. The prior I have had less success with, but I think if you know what you're doing, that's a good way to do it. But yeah, if you have any ideas or want to say if contradict me, please.
Okay. Rezi, I'll let you go first. Then I want to jump in.
I think one of the shortcuts to that, if I followed this question correctly, also is the sensation of loud stuff that kind of was hurting your ears is a big compression wave of bass coming at you from across the room, and dynamics processing sort of simulates that when the wavefront happens, and then we compensate for it. So if your compressors are kicking in a little bit late, and that's the kind of distortion we're getting, that starts approaching that, oh, this is loud, this feels dangerous. And secondarily, distortion of any sort, so that the peaks, the loudest parts of the attack of sounds, are simulated beyond the range of hearing. Not so the whole thing is distorted and turned into a square wave, but just so that the peaks are folded back in on themselves and turned into a mess. Psychologically, that's, starts getting aggression and pain and damage kind of hints to the brain. Yeah, those are
brilliant. Thank you. 400 cycles is the frequency where the mud happens. Pull 400 out of everything, and well, if it needs to be. Dude, tell me why. When you distort shit, 400 and 3K, but 400 usually just becomes so thick, and so there's too much going on. I will get my EQ, I will give it a 1 octave spread, and I will go through and I will turn everything right up, like 24 dB. I'll run it through the whole spectrum, and when that sound distorts, pull that frequency out. Yeah. It's always 400, man. Sometimes 200. Always fucking 400. Another really important thing to do is when you're listening to your mix, go through the sounds and mute them. One at a time. And if you can't hear it, leave it out. Because if you can't hear it when you're in, I'm listening to the mix mode, trust me, your audience won't either. But it's going to clutter everything up. Even if those little tiny things are cluttering shit up. Secondly, if you've got a sound that is really cool and you do hear it and it's got a slow in and a slow out, but you don't hear that slow in until a bar in, and then when it fades out, you don't hear those last 2 bars, chop, chop, slow fade, slow fade. So instead of it taking 2 bars to fade in to get to the 2 bars of good bit, then fading out over 2 bars, the whole thing only goes for 2 bars. Give it a slight, go into your software and give it a slight up, slight down. So it just goes in like that instead of like this. Just like that. And that's going to clean shit up. A common problem with electronic music is that there's a little bleep bloop line. And if you can't hear the bleep bloop line, get rid of it. And think of it like this. When you're doing your music, think of it like it's 1983. No, it's 1978. And you're that person, behind a whole bunch of synthesizers. Doing that. You're that person. Probably with a headscarf. Definitely with big kind of cowboy boots. And hair. There's hair going on. And just think about it, that person is the keyboard player in the band. Yes. Is the keyboard player in this track. Person's only got 2 hands. He can push go on the person can push go on the drum machine and go on a sequence. And maybe they got a foot pedal going as well. So think of what that person can actually play. If there's 2 or 3 pad lines going on, big synthesizer pads going on, I only got 2 hands. And also remember, when you got pads going on, you always go 3 in the left, in the right, and 2 playing the bass. Get rid of this. You're not going to hear it. Get rid of it. And instead of having like a tight C, E, G chord, get this E, drop it down an octave. E, C, G, like that. So it's everything spread out. So harmonically, the frequency range is not taking up so much. It's more spread out, and you're still getting the message across. Spread shit out more. Cut. Edit. If you can't hear it when you mute it, get rid of it. Resi.
Just to bring it back around to the distortion and fullness versus sparse arrangements. Yes, subtract, but also distortion at many different stages. Because this guy's got a mustache and the hair and the flowy capes and stuff. He was getting distortion in the microphone. He was getting the distortion from his speaker amp. He was getting distortion from the power amp. He was getting distortion at the console, distortion on the tape, distortion in mastering, and all of that little subtle bits of compression doesn't add up to buzzy sounding kazoo distortion, but it's filling back up all that space, excuse me, microphone, that he's only got 2 hands feature sort of robbed him of being able to sound like an orchestra, but then we bring it back by squashing it in all these small stages.
And a cape.
And the cape.
I actually think for my next Kickstarter, I should do capes. And they have to have something written across the back in sparkly silver. Like
sequence.
Like Moog or something. I need to do capes and platform boots. He's not wearing cowboy boots, I lied. He's wearing platforms. And he's singing about knights and swords and stuff like that, but not V&V Nation swords. This is like Eno swords.
Rick Wakeman has entered the building.
And elves. And he uses lyrics like thou wist and stuff like that. Yeah, and he's got like a whole bunch of different mogs that you gotta. Everyone needs Maz, you should be in. Good to hear from you. I'm gonna do capes. And they've got to have the big the big collar. Oh yeah. I'm doing capes. You heard it first. I totally didn't. We derailed that one. Does anybody else have a question that we want to derail? Or are we going to raid on over to MTV TV? Yeah. I got the nod. You know, there's the let's do that nod, which is... And then there's the kid, you're okay nod, which is...
Which one formed the consensus on this occasion?
That was yeah. Let's write to MTV TV nod, which is Ivan. That is so not the nod for let's write to MTV TV. That is. I don't know what's going on. All right, thanks for joining us. We're just gonna stay back here in the Zoom and chat. You're rating to MTV TV. We are doing this berserkness again next week. Hold on, I want to put the link in here. Give me 300 moments of your life. Cause everything right here, Angelspit's music. Ba-dum ba-dum. Oh, it's coming. Give me a break. Follow Angelspit on Twitch. Damn it. You rock. We're gonna go to MTV TV because it's bloody awesome. I'll put the link up to MTV as everybody is. So that's not MTV. That's MTV TV because it's great. We're going there now. It's great. You rock. Next Saturday here. Bring questions and capes. Bye. Bye. Bye.